Today, Rebecca Kimbel, a distinguished Toastmaster, is going to be speaking to us in a workshop called The Art of Communication. I would like to present to you Rebecca Kimbel.
Thank you, Ellen. The art of communication, it truly is an art. Our ability to communicate changes our entire lives. This program today is specifically about Safe Kids Now and keeping our children safe. If we do not give our children a positive experience in communication, we will cripple them in the future. Yes, cripple them. Good communication will help them make better decisions. It will help them make brilliant decisions on their associations and affect their entire choices in their lives. It is the foundation for a good life. Many of you think, well, my children would tell me if something was wrong. Would they really? A lot of children don't tell their parents if something is wrong because they are afraid. They're afraid their parents may be angry with them because they are not mirroring what their parents want them to mirror in their feelings and their emotions. They're afraid of rejection. They're afraid of punishment. They're afraid of many forms of non-acceptance. Maybe they're trying to protect themselves, someone else, or maybe even you. In order for your children to communicate with you, they must feel safe, very safe. In today's busy world, many parents don't realize the subtle signs when something is wrong. They don't recognize a child's change in sleeping habits, eating habits, or maybe just their whole countenance. Some do, and then they ask, is something wrong? And the child says, of course not. But they say it with their eyes turned away. And that parent knows that that child is hiding something, but they don't know what it is or how to communicate with them. How did it get that way? It started with the basic communication that child has had with you all of their life. In order to understand good communication and what it is, it's important to understand what it is not. You cannot change something until you recognize the situation you need to change. So first up, we need to deal with, you said it, the wrong way to communicate. The wrong way to communicate. I have a list over here. These are the common wrong ways to communicate. Warning or threatening. If you threaten a child, you're telling that child, whether you mean to or not, that their feelings and their emotions and what they need, think, or want is comparatively unimportant compared to you or anybody bigger or stronger or in authority. Ordering and commanding a child. Ordering and commanding a child tells them that you don't trust their capacity to make proper judgments. You don't trust their ability to do things right. You have no faith in them. You may not realize that's what you're telling them, but you are. Judging and criticizing a child. If you judge that child, criticize that child, and blame that child, do you really think they're going to want to tell you anything? Do you really think they're going to come to you and feel safe in your presence? Do you really believe they want to open up their heart to you and share it with you as their best friend? Best friend? Wouldn't a best friend accept them the way they are? There's something inherently wrong with judging, criticizing, and blaming. It's important for us to seek those things out and progress through the wrong ways to learn the right ways. Ridiculing, shaming, and name-calling. This is really destructive to a child's self-esteem. This chips away at who they are, the better things they thought they were, and the dreams they might have achieved. Ridiculing, shaming, and name-calling is extremely destructive. It is not funny. It's really undermining your child. Lecturing and arguing. We think that lecturing and arguing may be the answer, but it isn't, especially when the child gets a little older. They've heard that lecture so many times, they already know it. They already know what you're going to say, and the resentment when they have to listen to it over and over and over is building up. There are better ways to communicate than lecturing and arguing, and we're going to find out what they are today. Moralizing and preaching. When we moralize and we preach, we're dealing with what should, what ought, and what must. Shoulds, oughts, and musts. When we do this, you cause the child to believe that you have no faith in their judgment or their capacity to think, and they must just obey. This creates blind obedience. Blind obedience is extremely a huge no-no if you want that child to use critical thinking. If you're going to force them into blind obedience, they'll be afraid to make decisions when they get older. They will be at the mercy of those that can force them into blind obedience. When your child grows up, you want a sufficient young adult, not a person in an adult body that is going to blindly obey out of intimidation or degradation or any other means. Probing, questioning, interrogating. This forces the child to tell you like you want to hear it. Not like they saw it, not like they felt it, not how they felt inside. Your point of view, how you want to hear it. This is like an attorney does. You ever been in court? How discomforting that is? The attorney gets you on the limb and saws you off. Saws the limb off and drops you if you say anything wrong. That's what you do to your kids. Because what you're saying, by basically as an example, is, I told you not to speak to that boy. If you hadn't spoken to him, he wouldn't have said all those nasty things to you. This is how the child feels if they say anything wrong. So probing, questioning, and interrogating is not the answer. There's a better way. Advising and giving solutions. Well, that's got to work. Not really. Do you realize that absolutely nobody likes to be told what to do? We don't. We instinctively, Advising and giving solutions is good when somebody asks for them. Forcing them on somebody, no. Why is this really bad otherwise? Is because your job as a parent is to teach that child to be capable of making good decisions. Not believing somebody else always has to make them for them because they're incapable and their mind is never going to work well enough to do it. Your job is cut out for you. You have to teach them to find a way to make good decisions and their own solutions. Today we will learn that. We will learn the art of real communication where all of the aspects apply that we're talking about in the positive. The misuse of praising, sympathizing, consoling, and supporting. That can be good, but a lot of parents misuse it. For example, a child comes in crying and their mother immediately says, "Oh, don't cry. You'll feel better when." And the little child's thinking, "Right now, I'm so terrified, Mama. If you knew how I felt now, you'd listen to me." Stop and think for a moment. The parent acts that way because they don't know how to deal with the child's feelings. They want those feelings gone as soon as possible, soothe the child, make them quit crying, get it over with. Sounds good? Doesn't work. Makes the child feel like pleasing Mama and letting go of those feelings are more important than how they really feel. There's a way to connect with that child's feelings and make them understand their feelings and accept their feelings and move beyond that and keep that closeness of the emotional love and acceptance the way you are. There is a way, and that's not it. Praising and agreeing, if it isn't done correctly, has its downside. When we praise a child dishonestly, the child feels manipulated. For example, a parent can say, "Oh, you did so good today, you played so well, you really did good." And the child can say, "I didn't, I lost, I didn't do well, and you're only saying that to make me practice harder." That child believes that. They're being manipulated because they didn't succeed, and that's how they feel. But there's another downside to using praising like it was candy and just passing it out. The child becomes needy of existing on your praise when they're little. And when they're older, they come to believe that you will back them always, right or wrong. This becomes a great deterrent in keeping your child on the right path when they get older. And parents figure, well, what did I do? They really, honestly don't know. Today we're going to learn what to do and what not to do. Every one of you have handouts on your seat that you will use in the workshop that we will have today. The handouts will all be applicable to this. All of these things will be done first and foremost without judgment. Can you imagine talking to anybody without judgment? Do you think it's possible? Most people in their everyday lives just think they can't. But it's only a bad habit and you can break it. The very first thing we need to realize, the art of communication is 50% listening. If nobody's listening, you're not communicating. It's not a lecture, it's an exchange of information. If you want to talk with someone, anyone, but particularly your child, the first thing you need to do is be consciously aware of the emotional environment that you're in. Not just the exterior environment, the emotional environment. Is that child paying attention to you? Looking away, fidgeting? If you're not paying attention to their response or lack of it, if you're not paying attention to their body language, you're not listening well because you're not paying attention. That's first, number one. Number two, accept how your child feels. Accept how they feel. Resist the temptation to tell them how they should feel, how they ought to feel, and how they better feel. Step forward and jump into the current reality and accept how they do feel. Acceptance does not mean agreement. It means that you acknowledge that every human being has a right to their own personal feelings, and that you can realize, recognize, and accept their personal feelings. Because if you were them with exactly the same experience and their age, you'd feel the same way. So acknowledge who they are in their development, what they feel, love them and accept them for who they are. Quit fast forwarding it to who you think you want to make them into. Accept who they are now. Accept who they are. And when you've accepted who they are, validate it. Verbally validate it. Tell your child, I can see that upsets you. And the child says, yeah, that upsets me. And listen. Paraphrase back to that child. Accept how they feel. Do you really think a child is going to tell you how they feel? If it's dangerous? If they're going to lose your love? If they're going to be punished? If they're going to have some sort of penance to pay because they don't think exactly like you? Ladies and gentlemen, you must, if you're going to be a successful parent, and if your child will be successful in life, you must teach your child to dare to question everything, even you. You will paraphrase back to your child the acceptance. And then, when you have done that, you can ask the child what they need. Here's the key that helps you teach your child. After you have totally accepted them, and they know they're accepted and loved just the way they are, you ask them, what is it that you need? And they will tell you. And through the questioning of what the child needs, and what you can do to fulfill those needs, you will guide them into making decisions, into maturity, into using their brain, into self-confidence, into the capability of stepping into real world, and keep that closeness, real closeness of honesty with you always, that they can tell you anything. There are handouts on your seats. We're going to go into a workshop, and we're going to use in the workshop these particular aspects here in blue will be used in the workshop. The first thing that you will learn to do as you divide up in groups, you will pick a head of the group, you will choose a speaker, and the speaker will speak, the rest will listen and ask questions as it comes down, and each one of you will learn how to do this. You will observe how the person feels. For example, if the head of the group decides they're going to lead in and they're going to start being all slumped down in the seat, you can say, you look a little discouraged. And they say, oh yeah, I am discouraged. And then you acknowledge that. You say, you're discouraged. Oh yeah, I'm so discouraged. Then they'll usually talk a little bit more and say, well, I'm sorry you feel so discouraged. And then you move into their feelings. Oh, I feel so bad. My parents got in a big fight. They were saying such horrible things to each other, and my dad started cussing and he walked out the door. So then you're observing now not just the feelings, but what they saw. Now notice that they're telling you what happened, but they're not telling you, making a judgment on it. They're not saying it's right or wrong. They're sharing their feelings. It's without judgment. So I said, oh, your parents got in a fight, and your dad walked out the door. That's validating you heard what he said. Just validate it, lovingly. And I say, yeah. And then he gets into his feelings, and he says, when that happens, I feel just horrible. It happens so often. I can't sleep at night. My whole world feels like it's coming apart. I feel so insecure. What's going to happen if my parents break up? I am so scared. Then the listener responds by saying, you're scared because you don't know what's going to happen if your parents break up. Paraphrasing it back to validate you heard. And the child says, yeah, that's how I feel, and I am so scared. And then you say to that child, what is it you want? Oh, I want my parents to get along. I don't know what to do. I've seen so many kids, their parents are divorced, and I don't know what's going to happen. I need my parents to get along. He said, you need your parents to get along. You paraphrase that back, their needs. Say, what would you like to happen? This comes into their learning critical thinking. These are real important. They might sound simple, but you ask the child what he needs and what he would like to happen. These kind of questions lead the child into thinking logically, despite their emotion. And the child will say something like this, I need to feel safe. I need to feel my dad's not going to go away and I'm not going to lose him. I need to feel security and love in the house, and I don't know what to do. Then the child might say, you ask, is there anything I can do to help? Say, yes, yes. The child might cry a little. You accept that, and you give them comfort if you need to, but don't judge. And the child may say, I don't know what to tell you to do. I don't know what to tell you to do. And you may say, would you like me to go with you to your mom and dad while you tell them how you feel? And the child may say, oh yes, and then do it. These are examples. You can choose any subject. These are examples. But you are not overriding the child's intelligence at any point. You are not rejecting the child at any point. You are not passing judgment on the child or anything he said at any point. It's acceptance, it's understanding, it's a guide to critical thinking. Without critical thinking, we're not really adults. That means that about 98% of us in our population are in trouble. Ladies and gentlemen, please divide up for the workshops, take your sheets, go to the areas and choose the leader. We are now going to embark upon our Art of Communication workshop.
We are honored today to be presenting our program from Safe Kids Now through members of Toastmasters International at the Eureka Humboldt County Library. We really appreciate Joanne Bauer at the Humboldt County Library for all her support and assistance in helping us set up for today's program.